Hey, I'm Salem. I tell scary stories that sneak into your dreams and tickle your spine. So grab your blanket and a snack if you're brave enough. Stay if you dare, because once the story starts, you can't look away. Jean first noticed the humming sound the night Parker refused to bark. It was late, later than Jean was supposed to be awake. The moon hung low and yellow above the cornfields that stretched behind his family's old farmhouse. Inside, his parents were asleep. The house was quiet, too quiet. Jean lay in bed, listening. It was a low, steady sound, like a refrigerator running. But wrong. It vibrated in his teeth, in his chest, like it was inside him instead of outside. He sat up and pushed his glasses up his nose. Parker, his golden brown mutt, who usually slept at the foot of his bed, lifted his head and stared at the window. "Did you hear that?" Jean whispered. Parker's ears perked. His tail didn't wag. Instead, his body stiffened, muscles tense. A soft growl rumbled in his throat, then died like someone had turned the sound off with a remote. The humming grew louder. Jean slid out of bed and tiptoed to the window. The night outside was still. No wind, no bugs chirping, no owls. The cornfield stood perfectly straight, not even a stalk bending. That was wrong. There was always something making noise out there. "Stay here," Jean whispered to Parker, even though he already knew Parker wouldn't listen. Parker hopped off the bed and followed, nails clicking softly on the wooden floor. Jean eased up the blinds just enough to peek through. His breath caught. Out beyond the barn, just over the cornfield, hovered a circle of light. It wasn't like a plane or a helicopter. It didn't blink red and green. It was just a glowing ring, floating silently, except for that humming in Jean's bones. The light wasn't bright like the sun. It was a pale, sickly blue that made everything look drained, like a photograph with the color turned down. "What is that?" Jean whispered. Parker pressed his nose to the window, then suddenly backed away, head low, tail between his legs. A soft whine slipped out of him. "Parker, hey, it's okay," Jean said automatically, though even he didn't believe it. The light shifted. It tilted, just a little, as if looking at the house. Jean dropped the blinds. The humming grew louder. His heart started to pound. This wasn't some plane. It wasn't anything normal. His mind raced through every science fiction movie he'd ever watched, every story about lights in the sky and people who went missing and came back, different. "Nope," he muttered. "Nope, nope, nope." The humming suddenly cut off. Silence crashed into his ears so hard it almost hurt. He waited. 1 second, 2, 3. Nothing. Maybe it's gone, he told himself. Maybe it was just... A light flared white through the blinds, so bright Jean could see his own shadow on the opposite wall. Parker barked once, sharp and panicked, and then stopped. His mouth was open, teeth bared, but no sound came out. Jean's stomach flipped. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on his shoulders. The hairs on his arms stood up. The light wasn't just shining through the window, it was pushing, seeping into the room like fog. Jean grabbed Parker's collar. "Come on, we're going to Mom and Dad's room." But when he tried to take a step, his feet felt stuck like the floor had turned into thick rubber. His legs moved in slow motion like he was underwater. The white light faded into a blue glow. Shadows crawled across his walls, stretching and twisting, even though nothing in the room was moving. Something tapped on the window. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't a normal knock. It sounded soft, like fingers made of rubber sliding against the glass. Jean's brain screamed, "Do not look," like an alarm in his head. His hand shook on Parker's collar. Parker whined, a strangled sound that finally escaped his throat. Tap. The blinds lifted. Not all the way, just enough. An eye stared in at him. It wasn't like a human eye. It was too big, too dark. There was no white, just a glassy black surface that swallowed the light and his reflection and everything else. It blinked sideways, the lid sliding across instead of down. Jean froze. Parker did too. Every muscle in his small body trembling. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. The humming returned, softer now, like a lullaby. Jean felt his eyelids grow heavy. "No," he whispered. He tried to move, tried to shout for his parents, but his voice barely came out. The eye moved to the left like it was studying his room. Then it dipped, focusing on Parker. The humming changed pitch like a question. Parker's tail twitched. Then, to Jean's horror, his dog took a step toward the window. "Parker!" Gene gasped. He tightened his grip on the collar, but the air seemed to thicken, pushing his hand away. His fingers slipped. The blinds snapped closed. The bright light vanished, but the soft blue glow still outlined everything in his room. The door slowly creaked open by itself. Out in the hallway, the house was completely dark. No nightlight glow, no charging phone blink from his parents' room. It felt like the power had been cut from the world. "Mom?" he called, barely more than a whisper. "Dad?" No answer. Parker walked toward the hallway, step by steady step, like something was calling him. Gene grabbed onto the back of his collar again, this time using both hands. "Not without me," he whispered. Parker stopped, and for a second it felt normal. Just him and his dog in the hallway. Then the floor beneath them shifted. The wooden boards blurred, fading into smooth gray metal that felt cold even through Gene's socks. The hallway stretched, lengthening like someone had pulled its ends, the air filled with a sharp, clean smell, like hospitals and rain and something electric. We're dreaming," Gene muttered. "This is a dream." Parker let out a tiny sneeze, as if answering nope. A door appeared at the end of the hall. It wasn't their usual hallway door. This one was tall and rounded at the top, glowing softly around the edges. Strange symbols wriggled across it, like tiny white worms spelling a language that didn't belong on Earth. Gene's heart pounded so hard he felt it in his throat. He knew, just knew, that if he walked through that door, nothing would ever be the same again. The humming deepened. The door slid open without a sound. Beyond it was a room that did not exist in his house. It was enormous and circular, walls curving up into a ceiling that seemed wrong, like it was both close and far away at the same time. The metal glowed faintly under his feet. Machines hung from the ceiling like metal vines, blinking with pale blue lights. In the center of the room, a round platform hovered above the floor, spinning slowly, just a few inches off the ground. And standing around that platform were 3 figures. They were tall, much taller than Gene, with long arms that almost reached their knees. Their skin was a dull, grayish blue, smooth like plastic. Their heads were too big, too round, with that same black bug-like eye he'd seen in the window. Their faces had no mouths, not that he could see. One of them turned toward him, head tilting, eye blinking sideways. Gene swallowed. His legs shook. Parker surprised him then. The little dog stepped in front of him, standing between Gene and the creatures. His hackles rose. He didn't bark, maybe he couldn't, but he planted himself like a furry shield. The nearest alien raised a long, thin hand. Blue light glowed between its fingers. Gene expected to feel pain or fear or to be frozen in place. Instead, a strange warmth spread through his chest, like someone had poured hot tea into his veins. His panic dulled. A voice bloomed inside his head. It wasn't a sound exactly, but it formed words. "Do not fear." Gene's knees almost gave out. Who said that?" The alien's head tilted again. "We did. We speak like this to minds." The voice was flat, emotionless, but not cruel, more like a computer reading words off a screen. "We have come to study." "Study what?" Gene whispered. The alien's eye flicked down to Parker. Him. Parker let out a low growl. Gene grabbed his collar again. "No, you're not touching him." The other 2 aliens stepped closer. Their eyes glittered in the pale light. "Your world is changing," another voice said, a little higher but just as empty. "We sense fear, anger. You hurt each other. You hurt them." Its eye motioned toward Parker. Gene's stomach twisted. We're not all like that." "We know," the third voice said. "That is why we watch the Bonds." "The Bonds?" The one closest to him knelt. Or something like kneeling, its long limbs folding in ways that made Gene's skin crawl. It brought its face closer to his and Parker's. Gene could see his reflection in its black eye, a small scared boy clutching his dog. "The bond between you and this creature is strong. You care. You protect. You hurt when it hurts. We must understand why." "You can't just take him," Gene snapped. His fear finally boiled over into anger. "He's not a lab experiment. He's my dog." Parker's tail, unbelievably, gave a single shaky wag at the sound of Gene's fierce voice. The aliens fell silent, their heads turned toward one another like they were having a conversation he couldn't hear. The humming shifted, rising and falling like speech. After a long moment, the kneeling one turned back to Gene. "We will not harm him." Gene narrowed his eyes. "I don't believe you." The alien slowly reached out a hand. Its fingers hovered inches from Parker's head. Parker stared up at it, eyes wide, but didn't pull away. "He believes," the voice said quietly in Gene's mind. Parker stepped forward and pressed his nose gently against the alien's hand. Jean almost yanked him back, but stopped. The alien didn't flinch. Its fingers glowed slightly brighter, then dimmed. In Jean's head, the voice returned, softer. He trusts you, he thinks in pictures. Warmth, running, food, safety. You are at the center of his thoughts. Jean felt his face heat up. So what if I am? So everything you are, he forgives, the alien said. Humans frighten easily. You fear us. You fear each other. Yet still, this creature chooses you, even when afraid. This is unusual. Not really, Jean said, a little offended. Lots of people love their dogs. We know, another alien replied, but we do not understand why you hurt so much, and still choose to care. The humming deepened. The air around Parker shimmered faintly. The alien's hand hovered just above his head. Jean tensed. Stop, please. The alien's eye flicked back to him. You may watch. That didn't comfort him at all. A faint beam of blue light shone down from the ceiling, forming a narrow column around Parker. Dust motes glowed in it like tiny stars. Parker's ears drooped, but he didn't whine. His eyes stayed locked on Jean's face. Jean took a step closer. The beam tingled against his skin, like static. When he tried to stick his hand through it, his fingers met resistance, like a jelly wall. He could almost touch his dog. The aliens watched silently. Images began to swirl inside Jean's head. Parker as a tiny puppy, tripping over his own paws. Parker stealing a hamburger off the table and looking guilty. Parker cuddled against Jean's chest when he was sick with the flu. Parker sitting beside him after his best friend moved away, licking the tears off his cheeks. They flashed faster and faster, not just memories, but feelings. Joy, relief, comfort, the heavy, warm weight of his dog sleeping against his legs. Jean stumbled, clutching his head. Stop it, he gasped. Those are mine. We are not taking them, the voice said. We are seeing how he sees you. How he sees me? Jean panted. Yes, through his mind, we see yours. Through your mind, we see your world. So much noise, so much fear, but in this bond, quiet, safety. The alien's head tilted. We do not have this. Jean blinked. You mean, you don't have friends? The three aliens looked at each other. The humming changed pitch again. We have function. We have purpose. We do not have Parker. For the first time, the voice inside his head sounded almost curious, maybe even a little sad. The beam around Parker faded. The jelly-like wall vanished. Jean fell forward, landing on his knees, arms thrown around his dog's neck. Parker licked his face all over, tail wagging wildly now, like the terror had finally broken. Jean buried his face in Parker's fur. Don't ever do that again, he whispered, even though Parker clearly had no idea what that was. When he finally looked up, the aliens were standing very still, watching them. We have learned enough, the first one said. Enough for what? Jean asked. Enough to know we must wait. Wait for what? The alien's eye blinked slowly. To see if your kind destroys this bond or protects it. If you choose fear or care. Jean's throat tightened. I'll always choose him, he said, hugging Parker closer. No matter what. The alien took a step back. We will remember your words, Jean. Jean's heart stopped. How do you know my name? We heard it in his thoughts. The voice answered simply. He does not think Jean. He thinks, my boy. Jean's eyes stung. He looked down at Parker, who thumped his tail like it was no big deal. The humming rose, filling the room like a storm of bees. The walls rippled, the metal warping into waves. Jean shut his eyes and held onto Parker as tightly as he could. The floor vanished. He felt himself falling, not down, but in every direction at once. Up, sideways, backward, into and out of himself. His stomach lurched. Parker whined into his chest. Then, thump, they hit something solid. The humming cut off. Crickets chirped. A breeze whispered through the open window. Jean slowly opened his eyes. He was back in his bedroom. He was lying on the floor in his pajamas. Parker sprawled half on top of him, panting like they'd just run a marathon. The moonlight spilling through the window looked normal again. The walls were walls. The hallway outside his room was plain, old wood. Everything was exactly the same. Except for one thing. On his desk, where his sketchbook usually sat, there was a small, smooth object. Jean climbed to his feet, legs shaky, and walked over to it with Parker at his heels. It was a metal sphere about the size of a golf ball. Its surface was dark and shiny, but not like any metal he'd ever seen. It seemed to drink the light around it, the way the alien's eyes had. When he picked it up, it pulsed once, gently, like a heartbeat. Images flashed behind his eyes, stars, swirling galaxies, a view of Earth from far, far away. He heard the echo of that flat voice in his mind. "We will watch. Through the bond, we will see what you become." The sphere went still in his hand. Parker sniffed it, then sneezed, as if offended. He bumped Jean's arm with his head, clearly voting to ignore weird alien stuff and go back to bed. Jean stared at the sphere for a long moment. His parents were still asleep down the hall, completely unaware that anything had happened. Tomorrow, the news would talk about strange lights, or a weather balloon. People would argue about it online, some believing, some laughing. But Jean knew. He knew there were things up there in the sky, watching, not just for humans, but for the way humans loved the creatures that trusted them. He slipped the sphere into the back of his desk drawer, beneath some old homework papers. It felt wrong to leave it out in the open. Too dangerous. Too important. Then he crawled back into bed. Parker followed, flopping down in his usual spot at the foot of the mattress. "Parker?" Jean whispered into the dark. Parker lifted his head. "If they ever come back," Jean said quietly, "I'm not letting you go alone, okay? We're a team." Parker rolled onto his side and scooted closer, pressing his warm back against Jean's legs. His tail thumped twice. Jean smiled a little. Outside, the wind rustled the cornfields again. A car passed on the distant road. The world sounded normal. But when Jean finally drifted to sleep, he dreamed of a huge black eye watching a small boy and his dog, and somewhere very far away, 3 silent shapes looking up at unfamiliar stars and wondering what it would feel like to have a Parker of their own. And deep in his desk drawer, the little metal sphere pulsed once, faintly, like a heartbeat keeping time with Jean's and Parker's as they slept. After school, when the hallways grow quiet and the lights don't shine as bright, the building remembers things. Every step echoes a little too long, and every shadow hangs around a little too still. People say the school sleeps at night, but that's not true. It listens, and if you ever stay late enough, you might hear it breathe. A whisper slipping out from a locker that shouldn't be open. A shadow stretching itself across the floor. A voice that somehow knows your name. Most kids think it's just old pipes, or the wind sneaking through the cracks. But the ones who've heard it up close, they know better. They know about the notes that appear where no one's standing, the eyes that blink from places no one should fit, and the feeling, right behind you, that something's watching, waiting, and learning your footsteps. So if you ever hear a whisper down a dark hallway calling you closer, don't answer, don't turn around, and whatever you do, don't stay after the last bell. Well, you made it to the end. Go ahead and like this video. It keeps the monsters calm, and subscribe before they change their minds. Sleep tight if you can.